And welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy freaking Thursday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down some news and then also positional archetypes. We're going rich man, middle class man, and poor man for several different, value positions going on over in the fantasy football world. So joining me on this lovely morning here, we have none other than Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, The Rock McFarland. Dwain, we did a draft last night for 2 hours, and now we're back. How's it going, my friend?
Yeah, it was a great 2 hours. It was our first redraft, or just season long where we've got to actually manage the team. It's our first one. So, yeah, it was good to get that one under our belt. I felt pretty good about it. We'll have it up on YouTube later today for folks that want to go check it out. We picked from the late position. It's a 2-flex league, so I get a lot of questions about that. So we really focused on strategy. We even argued about a few picks, what position should we be attacking, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's my favorite stuff, man, thinking through the strategy stuff. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
Should be live up on our YouTube page around 3 p.m. We are also publishing it as an audio podcast, so make sure you guys check that out ahead of draft weekend. But yeah, otherwise, let's get back into business as usual. But first, Dwain, a quick word on Fantasy Life Plus. Fantasy Life Plus, our premium product over here at Fantasy Life. If you're looking for consensus ranks, cheat sheets, and the ability to do some of the most customizable mock drafts possible, again, we're giving you all those tools and so much more with Fantasy Life Plus. So also want to give a shout out to Dwayne's utilization tool suite, where the ability to, again, just go in and see the granular data at a level that I don't think is really possible at most other sites, to me is well worth the price of admission, which again, guys, even for the tier 2 package is less than a Chipotle burrito per month. So Fantasy Life Plus, check it out today. All right, Dwain, had some interesting news in the fantasy world yesterday. Maybe not a ton of stuff that, again, is completely shift the ranks, but we did have Falcons beat reporter Daniel Flick come out here and just, predict on behalf of the 32 Beat Writers podcast. Love 32 Beat Writers, by the way. If you don't follow them on Twitter, make sure you do so. But anyway, Daniel's projection idea for the Falcons backfield was around 16 carries per game for Bijan Robinson and also around 14 per game for Tyler Algier, with a 50-50 split in the red zone, with probably a little more work going to Tyler Algier. So naturally, Dwain, the fantasy community took this rationally. No, I'm just kidding. They freaked the hell out. So how do you feel about it right now, Dwain? Because I know you spent plenty of time this offseason in the projections lab.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting, thought. I'll say this, like the Falcons, like they're not going to run the ball 30 times per game this year. You need a running quarterback, or you need a, head coach named Mike Vrabel to get to that number. Maybe Arthur Smith, but like this team didn't get to that number last year with Arthur Smith. So kind of setting that aside, like the bigger takeaway here is, okay, what does this really mean for the splits? Because right now I've got Bijan at 60% of the rushing attempts and our projections. I've got Tyler Algier at 31%. The average running back one for an NFL team, not for fantasy, the average running back one for an NFL team gets 57% of the team's rushing attempts over the last 3 seasons. Man, Ian, I'm really hesitant to put a player like Bijan Robinson coming into year 2 that's got top 8 draft capital invested in him, that's a clear key to helping them win football games. I struggle to see a world where it's going to be closer to 50-50. So I've kept it where it's at. And Algier, for the record, I've got him at 31%. The average running back 2 on an NFL team gets 29%. So I've already got this. I've got this backfield just consolidated to 2 guys. I don't really have a third player getting that much work here. Like Avery Williams is still on the roster. Maybe he steals a few passing down reps. Hopefully not. I'm looking at this as really being more of a 2-way split between these guys. But we don't really have any risk at quarterback. Kirk Cousins is not going to run around. Michael Penix Jr., if he happens to get in, like he's a pocket passer. So we don't have to worry about any of that. So I disagree. I don't think that the splits that are being projected here are going to happen. I think it's going to be closer to probably that 60-30 mark. It could come down a little bit. Here's what I'm going to say about Tyler Algier. We know that he's a good NFL player, right? So when a coach has that, it is going to help them they're not going to have to overload Bijan. I don't think we're going to get these game scripts. What you're going to lose is at the end of the game, Falcons are blowing the team out. Probably not going to be Bijan out there. It's going to be Tyler Algier, like salting the game away in the final, maybe 2 drives. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, like we want all those fantasy points because those are your potential blow-up weeks where Bijan breaks off one more run and you get like a 40-point game. So I don't want to get overly concerned about it, but this is the reason that I had Breece Hall 1 spot ahead of Bijan Robinson in our ranks because I'm just not as sure. I like what we've seen from Braylon Allen. Isaiah Davis even, did some nice things last week, but we don't know for sure if the coaches are going to trust them at all behind Breece Hall. Whereas with Tyler Algier, we know they have an option that they can lean into a little bit more. And again, we never know what these coaches are going to do, Ian. And this is a risk of taking a running back early as coaches tinker with running back roles more than anything. Wide receivers, if you're really good, you're going to be on the field. You're Jamar Chase. Well, maybe he's not a great example, Ian, since we have the hold in, or CeeDee Lamb. We can't use those right now. But if you're a really good wide receiver, you're going to be out there, period. Whereas with running backs, we get these surprises every year where the role's not what we thought it was.
It's certainly a big debate between Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson. I know we have engaged in it throughout this offseason, Dwayne. And while I do think that Bijan and the Falcons, I'm more confident in that offensive environment as a whole. I mean, reigning top 5 offensive line, they brought all 5 starters back. Not exactly a reigning top 5 group going on with the Jets. But that said, I do hear you with Algier being someone that I'm a bit more concerned about. Again, siphoning at least a little bit more away than what Breece Hall might be seeing. So honestly, the answer at the top of your drafts, though, probably just yes, guys. I mean, if you wanted to go ahead and take, these 3 running backs at the top 3 picks of your draft, given some of the, again, problems going on with the wide receivers that Dwayne mentioned, I do not think you're crazy for doing so. Everyone should just be happy at the end of the day that I'm pretty sure, knock on wood, Bijan's going to have more than 2 carries inside the 5-yard line, and Breece Hall will have more than 1, unlike they did last season. So for the love of God, give us some touchdowns in Atlanta and New York, and accordingly, these talented running backs should flourish. Dwayne, the other big note in Fantasyland was Broncos head coach Sean Payton, understandably, predictably, naming Bo Nix as the QB1. What have we seen from Nix as a prospect, and any thoughts on if he could, maybe give us a fantasy relevant wide receiver or 2 this year?
Yeah, I mean, if you followed Sean Payton, through his career and you're listening to this, like Bo Nix is exactly the kind of thing that Sean Payton wants. It's tough when you come out and you compare someone to Drew Brees because Drew Brees was a really, really good quarterback, guys. But stylistically, Bo Nix, and we talked about this, at the NFL draft time whenever they took him. We even talked about him being a potential target for Sean Payton because he is a guy that wants to get the ball out quick in the quick passing game. He's going to hit his underneath receivers. He's going to let them do their work. He can work the interior seams of the field. He can also add a little bit on the ground. This is a guy that when he was at Auburn, he scored quite a few rushing touchdowns. You're not going to mistake him, for being Jaden Daniels out here, but like he isn't a complete, negative in the run game. So not surprised at all here, Ian. And if you go back and you just watch the preseason game last week and even the one before, all those things we just talked about, they're what they're doing. They're moving the wide receivers all over the formation. They're hitting them. Tim Patrick gets hit, basically crossing the formation, hit on basically what's a little bench route or, a quick out to the flat. He scores a touchdown on it. Lots of swing passes to the running backs, lots of RPO. And so Bo Nix, that's another thing he did do some of in college. So he really understands that game and quickly hitting, you've got the running back running the little swing route. Then you have another wide receiver coming over the middle of the field. And like, he understands how to read all of those concepts. I think the big question from a fantasy perspective, I think it's great for an NFL perspective. If you're a Broncos fan, you're kind of turning the page. You get to see your young quarterback. My question to you, though, Ian, is do we even really care in fantasy land unless you're playing in like a super flex? Because and the wide receiver room, we got Cortland Sutton. I did move Tim Patrick up the ranks. Like he's like 175 for me now. I think he's clearly the wide receiver 2 right now on this team. But still, as much as we love a good Tim Patrick story, probably because we were overweight in our best ball bags over the last 2 seasons, I don't think we get it twisted for this suddenly being a great receiving core. So I don't know how much upside's really here.
Nah, I mean, again, I thought he was going to have the starting QB1 week 1 job from the beginning, and that didn't exactly change my ranking of Bo Nix as someone that, again, is far closer to QB24 than, QB12 or anything like that going on. So super flex, you want to take him later, best ball at the end of a draft. I do think you can talk yourself into some value being there. But yeah, this as a full roster, still looking like one of the lesser ones in the NFL. But hey, good for Bo Nix becoming the first Broncos quarterback to start in week 1 since John Elway. And yeah, you mentioned the rushing production, Dwayne. 20 rushing touchdowns in his last 27 collegiate games at Oregon. I mean, 7.3 fantasy points per game from just rushing production over the last 2 seasons. Not that far removed from Caleb Williams' 8.6 number. So maybe he does, surprise. But again, I think we need to get a bit more tools in the offensive environment before we can be expecting any sort of fireworks from Nix out there. So Good stuff there on the main news. Also had a handful of items I'm going to run through more quickly regarding injuries and depth charts. So our rapid recap, Deshaun Watson was limited with general arm soreness, but Kevin Stefanski already came out and said, I decided just to hold him back a little bit, not overly concerned. We'll see if he ends up playing in the preseason finale. For now, we are not adjusting the old ranks. Also, Brock Bowers has not practiced since last week with a foot injury. That said, Antonio Pierce expects him to play week 1 and called the issue precautionary. 49ers running back room is getting healthier. We had Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, and Isaac Guerrero back at practice, just waiting on CMC and that calf injury. But again, fully expecting him to be out there for week 1. That said, rookie Parasol still not practicing with the shoulder injury, so we'll see what happens with the 49ers first round pick. Lions stud right tackle Penei Sewell left practice early with a foot injury. Keep an eye on that one. Treylon Burks left early with a back / hip issue. Saquon Barkley not dealing with an injury. I know we talked about that early on in the show yesterday, but yeah, good news. Turns out it's just training camp. Love to see that. And also Tyree could have practiced fully per head coach Mike McDaniel, but they're just, being, again, a little bit cautious with the right thumb with a mindfulness to week 1. Similar sentiment to Jalen Waddle, who did in fact return to practice yesterday. Bills beat reporter Joe Piscologia says Ray Davis and Ty Johnson closer to a 2A, 2B situation rather than there being one clear as day backup. It is a good reminder that as nice as Ray Davis has looked out there, Ty Johnson was dealing with an injury. So yes, still very much 3 running backs involved in Buffalo. No new updates on Brandon Ayuk per Kyle Shanahan. Dennis Allen hates Kendre Miller. I'm kidding. Kinda. Am I kidding? Hamstring injury, noted that he doesn't know if he can learn the system. I don't know if he can pick up the system because I haven't seen him out there. Please, Kendre, please, injury gods, just get healthy for a little bit. Who says no? Jared Mayo on the Patriots QB1 situation calls it still a competition. Jacoby's still QB1, but competition amongst all the guys on the field, including the quarterback spots. So still, guys, we have Pittsburgh and New England that have not officially named their starting QB, even if, again, Jacoby and Russ are the front runners. And then finally, the recent practices, top Patriots wide receiver group, Tyquan Thornton alongside Jalen Polk and Pop Douglas. So Kendrick Bourne should be out there once he's healthy. But for now, guys, Thornton as one of those super late round darts. At least the guy should be on the field. So that's the news. And now let's pay a little homage. Guys, Homage makes some of the most comfy t-shirts out there. And just in general, you guys should be interested because calling all fantasy football fanatics, the season is finally here. Draft rankings are being overanalyzed. Keeper decisions are being made and sleepers are being shortlisted. But how about your fantasy football fit? Dwain and I are both rocking some right now. I got Josh Allen, NFL Blitz. Pretty freaking cool. Dwain rocking with Barry Sanders. I don't know how the Dallas locals feel about you not supporting Emmett, but that's okay. Barry's a baller, no doubt about it. Guys, Homage's super soft, ultra comfortable NFL player apparel is a first-round pick that's sure to make your fellow managers jealous and allow you to gloat in style all season long. From past stat-stuffing legends to the current crop of fantasy studs helping you to secure this year's championship, they've got everything you need to gear up for the new season. Check out homage.com, that's HOMAGE.com/fantasy to reveal their top-ranked officially licensed player tees so you can rep your fantasy team with pride. Be sure to use promo code LIFE for an exclusive discount for Fantasy Life listeners. Again, it's on our screen right now, but homage.com, promo code LIFE for an exclusive 20% discount on your first order. And again, remember to pay homage. All right, Dwain, it's archetype day here. We'll be talking some draft strategies tomorrow, but today, basically asking ourselves in various points of the draft, honestly, you should ask yourself this before every draft pick: what can I get now that I can't get later? But hey, if you do happen to not get what you want now, when can you get a similar version of it later? So I want to go through, again, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, archetypes, because as much as, Dwain, we have our rankings for a reason, being more of a tier-based drafter, and again, just asking yourself that what can I get now that I can't get later question, I do believe helps us build the strongest overall roster and accordingly helps us, just adapt to a changing environment, such as last night where a bunch of running backs were going off the board early.
Yeah, for sure. And I know right off we're talking quarterbacks. That's an easy one. But if you want to go look at the tiers and see how we've broken them down, Ian, I know you've got yours out. You've also got this article, which is great. People can see some of the different archetypes. But this is how I break my tiers down. So there's really 3 dual threat quarterback tiers. And it's really based around that whole concept you just talked about. of, okay, I could take this now, but there's actually one I really like later. So that means if I think I feel really confident in being able to get similar production later, 4 or 5 rounds, that allows me flexibility to now say, maybe I need to attack a different position at this spot in the draft that I actually don't think I can get later, especially if you're in a league like we were last night, Ian, over on Real Time Sports, where you've got to take 2 flex players. It's really tough to try to come away with an elite quarterback and also come away with a really good tight end in those middle rounds when you know you're going to have to start 2 flex players, especially in a PPR league. So something has to give there. And that's really where these tiers come in. So regardless of position, we'll get into some of them, but through all of my tiers articles, this is how I break things down, into guys based on stylistically what kind of player they are, what's their most likely role, and what's the competition on their team, for touches once we get away from the quarterback position, talk running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends.
And this is something we offer with that Fantasy Life Plus package, where with our cheat sheets, again, gives you the rankings, but also gives you those tier breaks. And guess what? It's adjusted to whatever your league settings happen to be. So check that out. But yeah, Dwayne, let's go ahead and get into quarterbacks. First archetype, questionable passer with high-end rushing ability. Our rich man is Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson, right now on ESPN. QB6, pick 50.7 overall ADP. Middle-class man, Commanders quarterback, Dwayne's arguably favorite player in the world, Jaden Daniels, QB 13, pick 118.3. And then the poor man, maybe QB 2 for now, but still pretty explosive when he gets a chance. Steelers quarterback Justin Fields, QB 28, pick 169.5, regularly available at the end of drafts. So again, Dwayne, talk about kind of how you might balance where, yes, Anthony Richardson is someone where we have him ranked higher. Projections say he's going to finish higher than Jaden Daniels. But, if we are being pressed and there's some really good running back or wide receiver we like, maybe we are inclined to go ahead and take that guy and fall back because Jaden Daniels is going to be available much later in more drafts than that.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately what we're leaning into, this is why we do the archetypes. The major driver to that is the fact that they have this rushing upside, okay? And so you talk about it. You've actually got it written out on the show sheet here. I thought you were going to lead us in with it, but just really looking historically over the quarterbacks. I'm about to call them running backs. Well, they are running backs partially, but they can still throw the ball. So whenever you look at 27 quarterbacks with 100-plus rushing attempts over the last 10 seasons, per Ian Hartitz research, 41% of them have been top 3 quarterbacks. 16 of them, 59%, have been top 6 quarterbacks, and only 3, 11%, finish outside the top 12. We have 2014 Colin Kaepernick. He was kind of on his last leg at that point. 2018 Lamar Jackson wasn't in a full-time. No, was Lamar injured that year, or was that the non-full-time role, Ian?
That was honestly a little bit fluky because, that was when we basically took the job from Flacco, but his per-game numbers are messed up because he was being used as a wildcat. So honestly, Lamar was a QB1 down the stretch.
Yeah. And so 2020 Cam, that's the Patriots' older version, of Cam Newton. Wasn't quite the rusher that he once was, didn't really have any weapons around him, but still, only 11% of these guys. And I kind of looked at something similar. I looked at 21 instances going back to 2011, but I also capped their passing yards. I said, okay, can't have over 3,500 passing yards, but had at least 100 rushing attempts. The average finish for that group, Ian, not good, not prolific passers, QB8. Okay, so when we look at a guy like, Jaden Daniels, why I love, the middle-class man in this group is I think he really has a good chance to score just as many points as Anthony Richardson. Now, I do think Anthony Richardson's ceiling is higher because he's more the archetype like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, where he could get these carries down inside the 5. I know you're going to talk here more in a minute. What if he gets the tush-push stuff? We've got Shane Steichen, who came over from the Eagles. But the big thing for me with Anthony Richardson, 26% of the team's freaking design rush attempts in the games that he played last year. And he also had a nice scramble rate. So overall, he handled 34% of their carries already inside the 5-yard line. If you suddenly add the tush push to that, we're talking about a guy that is going to rival Jalen Hurts. And man, he's built in a way where you're like, can you really stop Anthony Richardson on a tush push? I kind of doubt that you can. I don't think you're going to be able to do it 2 plays in a row. So I do think Richardson has a little more ceiling in the run game because he could score. It wouldn't surprise me if he scored 12 rushing touchdowns. I don't think Jaden Daniels is getting to that, but I think they have similar, I think their ceilings are similar as far as pure rushing yards.
Hey man, I know relative athletic score, RAS, is not necessarily the most predictive number to be using for NFL success, but when Anthony Richardson is, what's he rank first all time in, being the most athletic quarterback out there, I do think it's a bit relevant. So I understand coming off the injuries. I mean, wasn't doing the best job of taking care of his body, it seemed like, throughout last season. In terms of on field, obviously the dude works his ass off, off the field. But, I thought it would have been reasonable to wonder, hey, are the Colts maybe going to run him less? And accordingly, Shane Steichen got asked about that. His response, are you going to limit Steph Curry from shooting three-pointers? So again, Richardson maybe has a little bit to go before being necessarily a Steph Curry in anything. But yes, that rushing upside in fantasy land, certainly Steph Curry-esque, and it's good to hear that it will not be going away anytime soon. So I love to call out, Dwain, about these guys not necessarily being prolific passers, because you have not, gone out of your way to give them a bunch of extra juice in the projections. I'm looking at them right now on FantasyLife.com, and Anthony Richardson, only 3,514 passing yards, 20 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, 3,457 passing yards and just 20 touchdowns through the air. I mean, those are conservative numbers, but I think it's a good reminder that that's how high the floor is for these dual threat quarterbacks. God forbid someone like Jaden Daniels, the reigning Heisman winner, someone who has tons of great throws on his LSU tape. I mean, Dwayne, if he does go ahead and, guess what? Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, maybe he does get close to 4,000 yards. Not saying he's going to finish as the QB1, man, but top three finishes are firmly in these guys' potential range of outcomes.
Yeah, the reason I'm also willing to wait on Jaden Daniels versus taking Anthony Richardson is I do think that Jaden Daniels has a higher ceiling in the NFL as a passer than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, there's some really good throws, and the guy can, throw with touch. He does a lot of good things, especially in the intermediate area of the field. But the problem is the consistency, right? Whereas with Jaden Daniels, we've seen it for the last 2 years in college. Now, he was surrounded by really good weapons at LSU. That goes a long way to looking good as a quarterback. But when I think about that true ceiling, I won't be surprised completely if Jaden Daniels somehow throws for 4,100 yards this year. I would be completely floored if Anthony Richardson did that. So knowing that, I think the upside you get as a passer with Jaden Daniels helps offset some of what we talked about earlier with Anthony Richardson getting those carries down inside the 5-yard line. I think we both feel better about that for Richardson. But again, like you say, Ian, we always talk about hate the ADP, not the player. We can also love the ADP, right? And we like both of these guys, but Jaden Daniels, you get 3 to 4 rounds after Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. You mentioned, again, the goal line possibility, and can't overstate the difference that it really is for guys like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts versus everyone else. I mean, last season, carries inside the 5-yard line, Jalen Hurts had 16. Josh Allen had 14. Next closest quarterback, a couple guys tied, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, 5. So again, when they are getting all those opportunities inside the 5, someone like Richardson getting a more design, has, I believe he said 260 pounds on him at this point. Yes, I am a little bit more confident in him getting that extra run compared to Jaden Daniels. I mean, Dwayne, I was cracking up watching, the Jaden Daniels, 13-yard gain he had in the preseason where, he ended up, getting tackled a little bit, and Dan Quinn looked like he had a heart attack on the sideline because he didn't slide. I mean, hey, if Dan Quinn was worried about that, bro, get ready to see some of the hits that Daniels might be, taking upon himself in the open field. Again, I think my favorite comp of the entire draft cycle was Yahoo Sports' Nate Tice saying that, again, Jaden Daniels has some Johnny Knoxville to his game once he hits the open field. So stay healthy, Jaden, stay healthy, Richardson, because if they do, really tough to find, too much of a, bearish scenario for them in Fantasyland. Let's quickly talk about Justin Fields, though, Dwayne, because, again, Steelers and Patriots are the two teams out there that have not named a week 1 starter yet. We do expect them to be Jacoby Brissett and also Russell Wilson. But that said, man, if we get through week 4 and Russell Wilson is looking too much like the guy we just saw in Denver, I would not be surprised at all if Justin Fields is leading this offense as early as potentially October. And once that's the case, Dwayne, I mean, only Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow have averaged more fantasy points per game than Fields over the last 2 seasons. So let's just imagine for a second, okay? Comes out right now. Mike Tomlin says, you know what? Justin Fields is our guy. We're just going to kick Russell Wilson to the curb. Where would you feel comfortable ranking Fields amongst all the quarterbacks if we actually did know that he has a real chance to start 17 games?
You'd be taking him right after Caleb Williams is gone, which Jaden Daniels goes, then Caleb Williams goes. Brock Purdy's right in that range. He's in that tier. I mean, you mentioned it, 20.6 and 19 fantasy points per game over the last 2 seasons. Like, you just, it doesn't matter that he's not really a good passer. The the fact that this guy is so good on the ground, and he's one of these players that he can take off and for 70 yards for a touchdown. Like, he's not just, I can run around a little bit. It's like, no, if you give him a lane and you get your backs turned to him and you get the wrong angles on Justin Fields, like, he can take it all the way to the house. I mean, 2 years ago, we saw some freaking amazing performances. Yeah. I will say this, like, I really do think Russell Wilson is like, I know last night we were drafting. I said 99.99% sure Russell Wilson's the starting quarterback week 1. Maybe I should be more like 90%, but
yeah,
I do think the door is open because Russ, let's be honest, he looks pretty cooked in this new era, if you will. See what I did there? In this new era of the way that the NFL defenses are playing, taking away these deep throws. It was Russ Wilson's best attribute. And they've taken that away from him. So I think that that's going to be a challenge, and that at some point we do see Justin Fields on the field, at some point. So I would say this. If for some reason you get totally just sideswiped at quarterback, your league mates are looking at you like, we'll all take 2 just so you don't get one. You don't get Jaden Daniels. You don't get Caleb Williams. The backup plans are all gone. And then you're still probably going to end up looking at him going, okay, fine, guys, I'll take Tua, which isn't going to be terrible. I'll take Jared Goff. Like, you're still going to get by. But I don't mind rostering Justin Fields with your last pick, just so you know that when that day comes, you've already got him, and then you're just going to plug him in your lineup. And then, you can go trash talk in the group chat. Say, nice try, guys. Nice try. I just landed a 20 points per game fantasy quarterback.
Not trying to tell you guys that Justin Fields is some savior in Pittsburgh or this fantastic real-life QB at this point, but you know who else wasn't a very good quarterback? Desmond Ridder, and he somehow had 6 top 12 finishes as Arthur Smith's QB1 last year. That happened, and again, with Fields running as much as he does, certainly on the table in Pittsburgh, if/when he manages to get that starting job. So that's it for the QB discussion. Dwain, let's talk some wide receivers now, and the archetype I want to focus on is talented separators with 150-plus target upside. However, we got some QB questions because sadly, not everyone gets to catch passes from guys like Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, and Joe Burrow. The dudes who, again, we're just feeling that much more confident about consistently getting the rock and, ideally in a more accurate manner. So, Rich Man, we have Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson going as the wide receiver 7, pick 15. Middle class man, Giants wide receiver Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 24, pick 60, still over at ESPN. And my poor man is Panthers wide receiver Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 37, pick 104 overall at the moment. So, Dwain, I know you have some other options, for middle class man and poor man, but first thing, man, let's give some love to Garrett Wilson, someone who was absolutely tearing apart the New York Football Giants during training camp. And I know one of your bold calls that everyone can find on FantasyLife.com was Garrett potentially finishing not as a wide receiver 1, but as the wide receiver 1. So, talk about that potential, reality, Dwain.
Yeah, great job by you on these archetypes. Like the 3 players you picked here would have definitely been my top picks for like each one, like rich man, middle class, poor man. So I got a couple of alternates that we'll throw in. But yeah, man, Garrett Wilson, the dude's just amazing. Number one, you got to have talent to be a good wide receiver in fantasy football, right? So if you think about running backs, you turn around, you hand it off, 9 other players, maybe the quarterback, maybe 10 other players are involved getting you those yards. If you've got Lamar Jackson, defenses are definitely worried about Lamar. That's helping you out. So you're just handed the ball. You don't have to earn getting the ball. No, they hand you the ball. At wide receiver, you've got to beat press coverage at the line of scrimmage, potentially. Then you got to get open. You got to be on the same page with your quarterback. You're reading a defense the same way. That quarterback has to have that trust. You have to be on the same timing with the quarterback. With all these things happening, it's so much harder to get your volume as a wide receiver because talent is a prerequisite. And Garrett Wilson passes that in absolute spades. The man had a 30% target share last year, a 46% air yard share. Those are high-end wide receiver 1 numbers. He was just stuck with Zach Wilson. That was the only problem. And guys, look, you can overcome mediocre quarterback play as a fantasy wide receiver. You can't overcome terrible quarterback play. Now, Josh Gordon did it. But Josh Gordon's just like, look, it's an outlier freak kind of thing. Occasionally it happens, but for the most part, like, you need a good quarterback. So we don't know where Aaron Rodgers is at this point in his career, but here's what I'll tell you. 30% of Aaron Rodgers from 2 years ago is going to be 1,000% better than Zach Wilson from last year. And if we get 70, 80% Aaron Rodgers, guys, look out. And I'll tell you this, Ian, when I watched the film on Aaron Rodgers, obviously we don't have any film from last year. You got to go to the year before. So, I mean, there's 2 years since then. the dude has no problem making all the throws. He's not getting around as much. He's not scramble drill kind of stuff as much as he used to when he was younger. He picks his spot on those things. But man, he can still hit all areas of the field. He still has supreme accuracy. I think the main thing is we just need Aaron Rodgers to stay healthy. As long as he doesn't get hurt, I think Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 1 overall is his upside.
Wide receiver 7 for me and Dwain in the old FantasyLife ranks. Nobody has him lower than 7. Matthew Freeman even has him up there at wide receiver 6, one spot ahead of AJ Brown.
If Freeman has him high, you can be all in.
Seriously, whenever you see Freeman going on a limb with anything, the man has a thought long and hard about it. So great stuff there. And again, with some of the injuries, happening at the top now and just kind of holdout situations, I know that kind of 109 to 112 draft spot wasn't looking all that great not that long ago. But now, Dwain, if I have a chance to start my draft with Garrett Wilson, maybe one of those dope running backs or just a Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm feeling pretty good about that start. So moving down to the middle class man, though, hey, Dwain and I have talked plenty about Malik Neighbors, guys, so we don't need to go super long into this, but yes, 141 target projection, 7th highest mark among all wide receivers in Dwain's FantasyLife projection. So Dwain, I know your son drafted the freaking best fantasy team of all time, so I'm not sure if there's a starting spot for Neighbors over there, but generally you should be thrilled to get this guy potentially in round 5 and round 6, depending in the home league that you're in. So again, wide receiver 24 in terms of his ADP, but if you actually again look at our rankings over on FantasyLife.com, I have him wide receiver 14, and I see Dwain in our ongoing battle to see who can rank him higher, has gone all the way up to wide receiver 12. So touche to you, Dwain. I got to go ahead and get that updated after the show and just, keep pushing at the envelope even more. So we love Malik Neighbors. You guys know that by now. But Dwain, you want to give a little bit of love to a pair of Ohio State Buckeyes and Chris Olave and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, so, I mean, definitely Neighbors is the guy here. I think Neighbors, like the range of outcomes on him is being more like Jamar Chase. Obviously, we've got Daniel Jones. There's a concern. 33% target share, though, in that first half last weekend with Daniel Jones. I think this guy is going to he's going to have a monster target season. He can make the big plays. But you're right. We've talked enough about Malik Neighbors. We love him. We're moving forward. But the other one's Chris Olave, man. Chris Olave, like if you look at his underlying data points, his target earning ability, yards per route run, and then you think about the quarterback play that he's really had to deal with. And Derek Carr, I want to say, people they just crush Derek Carr. They hate on him so bad. But Derek Carr, if we go back, Ian, like he is a guy that has supported multiple top 24 wide receivers in the same year in fantasy. He did it with Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree a couple times back in the day. So he's a guy that can come out and operate an offense. Last year, Derek Carr was hurt, man. Derek Carr was playing through so many of these games with injuries, playing the next game with an injury, and it was shoulder injuries that were really limiting things. I mean, some of those games, like I think he had like an average depth of target of 3 or 4 because he just couldn't get the strength behind the ball that he needed. But when you look at him healthy, and I'm not saying Derek Carr is suddenly a world beater, guys, but Derek Carr can throw for 240 to 250 yards per game in the NFL. And if you've got a condensed offense like we do with the Saints with a high-end talent like Chris Olave, I do think a wide receiver 1 finish is on the table. I'm going to put it out there. The vibes, not so good right now with the Saints. They're not so good. We're hoping that Clint Kubiak is coming in and really turns things around, because he ran a lot of play action back when he was the Minnesota Vikings, coordinator, ran a lot of 2 wide receiver personnel. He spent last year under Kyle Shanahan. So we were hoping for more motion. We haven't seen all that stuff in the preseason. Now, I will tell you this, coaches don't always unveil those sorts of things in the preseason. So sometimes we get a leading indicator. Sometimes we don't. I still think we're going to see some of those things show up in the preseason, but Ian, I would love it a lot more if I was seeing some of it already. And then the other guy, I'm just going to throw this one to you because like you're the king of kings on this, but like Terry McLaurin, I know he still hasn't had an elite target share on his resume, but if there is a year to do it, if Jaden Daniels can take that step, he might be the best passer that really Terry McLaurin has played with. And there's, if you have a quarterback that can play with anticipation and timing, that fits Terry McLaurin's game because that's how he wins. So I give an honorable mention also to Terry McLaurin, who's a really good route runner.
Terry McLaurin career quarterbacks. If you guys, want to just not listen, I understand, because it might make your ears start bleeding. But Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, Dwayne Haskins, may he rest in peace, Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, basically on one leg at that point, Case Keenum, Kyle Allen, Garrett Gilbert, Colt McCoy. I mean, arguably the two best ones were Jacoby Brissett and Ryan Fitzpatrick, but they only threw a combined 29 passes when Terry was even on the field. So I know, again, it's kind of been this battle between Terry and DJ Moore as, this generation's Andre Johnson or Allen Robinson. Not saying they reach the same heights as Andre Johnson. That dude's a freaking goat. I get it. But again, really seems like Terry at this point is surging ahead as the talented number one wide receiver, forced to, again, deal with one bad quarterback after another. So, Dwayne, I had some shockwaves being sent down through the Commanders media landscape after I pointed out how Terry, again, just hasn't been moving at all around the formation in the preseason. And, of course, in the article I write, it's just the preseason. I get it. It's just the preseason. And then when beat writers talk about it, they're like, it's just the preseason. Why is this guy even worried about it? So I get it, everyone. But with that in mind, Dwayne, it did kind of force them to start talking about it a little more, which is great. I just want more new information. And JP Finley noted that watching practice and McLaurin moving around plenty for those concerned. And then we also had another instance with the 32 beat writers where John Keim noted that we probably shouldn't worry as much as we are, especially noting that, beyond Terry just being awesome, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, we can't really trust anyone else yet. So probably, maybe looking a little too into the lack of movement. But I even said it in the article, Dwayne, even if he's not moving around, guess who also didn't move around? DeAndre Hopkins. And guess how many targets he had? Over 160 of them. So when looking at it, again, some of these guys just have a chance to be complete target hogs. You can do a lot worse than Terry McLaurin regularly going outside the top 30 wide receivers in fantasy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing that we also want is in motion at the snap. So, I don't know how much the beat writers know or do know. I don't know if they know it or don't know it. What things matter the most, for us in fantasy, which also means they matter the most in football because we want catches and yards and touchdowns. We all want the same thing, people. So it's interesting, though. I'm glad you brought it up because, to your point, I'm just glad that they're talking more about it. So that gives me a little bit more confidence that maybe Cliff Kingsbury is just keeping this under wraps. We just talked about that a second ago with the Saints. They don't always unveil these things in the preseason. So I hope that's the case. I hope that Cliff, when he took his sabbatical, did actually take time to reflect on the kind of offense that he was running and look around the leagues and see some of these other concepts. It's not freaking rocket science, guys. It's just copy what Mike McDaniel's doing. Just be like a Twitter person and just copy what someone else is doing. You don't even need to give them credit. You should just go ahead and do it because it works. It will get your offense moving just like that will get you followers on Twitter, unfortunately. But anyway, yeah, when I look at this, I don't want to overreact to the preseason. I'm glad that you put that out there because it is good to hear that it's happening in camp.
Final notes again, poor man. Panthers wide receiver Deontay Johnson, the best separator in ESPN's open rating over these last few years. He was the wide receiver 8 in 2021, guys, on a per game basis. One of the best combos out there in terms of just affordable price and target ceiling. And Dwayne, I know you also had Jordan Addison noted here. So, in a few words, if you don't mind, just talk about him. I will note that, per Dr. Deepak Chona, the plan to return next week for Addison suggests a mild high ankle sprain. Data predicts he should be playing week 1 at around 85%. So doesn't seem like too much of a long-term injury concern.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't throw this to me without me at least getting to talk about Deontay Johnson for a second. But
okay.
This guy is a wide receiver 1 as far as target earning ability. You mentioned it. How he does it is through his separation. He can win in the intermediate levels of the field, the underneath areas. And I think we don't know for sure, Ian, that he can't win deep. He's never had a quarterback. By the time he was with Ben Roethlisberger was cooked. He was just having to throw all this quick timing stuff. Well, Deontay Johnson can do that. But he might also have this upside to do more down the field. And I think, we have a chance to see that with Bryce Young. As much as everybody's out on Bryce Young, guys, he was still the number 1 pick last year. And I saw him throw plenty of great deep balls at Alabama. So Deontay Johnson, I think one of the biggest conspiracy theories out there is that 17.3 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 8 finish you talked about. It's like it never happened, Ian. No one wants to admit that was ever a thing. But yeah, just real quickly on Jordan Addison. I won't spend much time here. I just watch him, Ian, and stylistically, I see a player very similar to Deontay Johnson. I see a player that maybe could be the archetype of a Garrett Wilson. Now, he didn't come out and earn a 25, 30% target share like we've seen these other guys do, but he also plays opposite of Justin Jefferson. So I'm not near as confident in that one. It's just more stylistic. And if somehow things went right for the Vikings offense, I think there could be value. I think whenever I watch Jordan Addison play, I'm like, this is a good player. Like the double moves, all the different things he can definitely get deep on you. He can cook. He's got speed. So I think he can win at all the levels of the field. It's just really a question of, we got a questionable quarterback situation with Sam Darnold, and you got to deal with Justin Jefferson. So he's definitely poor man's. Probably ain't even poor man's. Got to go poor man's with Jordan Addison. Oh man, I don't want to say
homeless
that.
Man.
You said that.
Okay, I said that, not Dwayne. For the record, guys, Drew Davenport, our expert legal attorney, who also loves fantasy football, is on record saying he does believe Jordan Addison will play this entire season. Any potential suspension risk likely not to come into play until 2025. So keep that in mind. And guys, before we get over to running backs and tight ends, a quick word for our friends over at DraftKings. Hey everyone, with the football season kicking off, it is the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet just $5 will instantly get $250 in bonus bets, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. That's something we can all celebrate. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Again, stay in on the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets back instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. All right, Dwayne, running back archetypes. We're talking early down grinders with double-digit touchdown upside. So I'm talking rich man, Ravens, running back Derrick Henry going off the board, RB8, pick 19 at ESPN. Middle class man, Lions, technical, RB2, David Montgomery, RB21, pick 73 over on ESPN. And the poor men, plural. See what we're doing here, everyone. Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott going pick 111, and Gus Edwards for the Chargers going pick 136, running back 33 and 39 respectively. So again, Dwayne, Derrick Henry, don't think we exactly need to explain to everyone why moving from the Titans to the Ravens is going to be good for his potential scoring upside. But yeah, man, we mentioned Gus Edwards, 16 rushing touchdowns for Gus over the past 2 seasons. 0 came from more than 7 yards out. If we had to bet on one player in the NFL scoring 15 touchdowns this year, your life is on the line. Derrick Henry's going to be up there as a top choice, man.
Yeah, he's up there. CMC would get, the first spot. But after that, I think, yes, at a skill position, I think Derrick Henry's right there. So, yeah, I don't really have anything to add. Derrick Henry playing in a much better offense behind a better offensive line where defenses have to worry about Lamar Jackson. And quite often, they want Lamar Jackson to hand the football off because they don't want to deal with Lamar Jackson running for 80 yards. So it's just a really unique situation the defenses are going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to pick their poison. And I feel bad. I feel bad for these defensive coordinators because can you imagine? No, guys, we actually want to invite them to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and give him a big running start. I do not want to be the middle linebacker on the other team.
Ooh. Yeah, good freaking luck. And then when Lamar keeps it, you got to try to run that dude down. Long day indeed. Going to be some sleepless nights for defensive coordinators, I'm sure. With Montgomery, someone that we've already kind of talked about a bit over the last few weeks because of the Jahmyr Gibbs injury going on. But again, as we noted yesterday, good news with Gibbs firmly expecting to be back for week 1. But just a reminder, guys, that Montgomery and Jamal Williams before him really have a lot of opportunities to score inside of arguably the most fantasy-friendly running back for, that position in the entire NFL. And just pick 73, truly a prime 0 RB candidate because he's someone that, might be a touchdown-dependent RB2 when Gibbs is healthy. But without Gibbs, just like Gibbs without Montgomery, we're looking at a legit top 5 ceiling for the man week in and week out. So gotta love David Montgomery, again, still being priced outside the top 20 running backs in fantasy. Dwayne, though, you want to give a little bit of love to Raheem Mostert, who, yes, is old, but you know what? My man hasn't, suffered any really major injuries over these past 2 years. And yes, we love Devin Achane, but Raheem Mostert, man, certainly seems like he's being priced a bit closer to his floor than the ceiling that we saw last year.
And that's the key. You're getting him priced closer to his floor. Obviously, we love Devon Achane. We talk about it all the time. right? We've talked about Achane until we're blue in the face, but that doesn't mean that we don't like
neighbors.
Mostert for where you can get him. I tell my neighbors too. It doesn't mean that we can't like Mostert too, because of where he goes in the drafts. And whenever you look at Mostert, Ian, it's kind of funny. Like Ben Gretsch had a really good tweet on, Twitter. Sorry, on X. I still call it Twitter, guys. But he talked about, guys, look, we're looking at a guy like Derrick Henry that we just talked about, who's an aging running back, and the reason we love him is because we think he has this huge touchdown upside. Well, it's like, okay, look at Raheem Mostert. He scored 21 touchdowns last year, and you get him like 6 rounds later than Derrick Henry. Now, he has an ascending talent behind him and Achane that's going to really try to take away some of that work. So I get it. But it is one of those situations where, Ian, you look at it and you're like, should they really be that far apart? Because we really do love the Dolphins' ground game, even if it is one that is split up, because we really trust Mike McDaniel and we trust the absolute bind that he puts defenses in. When you go look at these runways, and that's what they are runways that these players are running behind, whether it's Mostert, Achane, we see some Jalen Wright this season. They all get that same kind of look, and then they're all fast. So it's like you just give them a little and they take a lot. So yeah, Raheem Mostert, one of my favorite picks later in drafts, especially if I started off heavy at the wide receiver position.
8 full healthy games together last year. Devon Achane ended up racking up 117 combined carries and targets. Mostert, 116. So really is a 1A, 1B situation. However you want to flip it, expecting both guys to, again, be putting up plenty of points. I mean, Dwain, since 2010, there's only been 2 running back duos to both put up top 12 numbers in the same season in terms of PPR points per game. We had Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram on one of those Saints squads. And last year, we had Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So gotta love that later value. And then for the poor man, again, mentioned Ezekiel Elliott and Gus Edwards. But you even have a third, Dwain, someone that maybe we're sleeping on a little bit in that kind of muddled RB3 range. Talk a little about Brian Robinson and what you expect from him in this new look Washington Commanders backfield that also does include longtime fantasy stud Austin Eckler.
Yeah, and so having Eckler there, and based on what we've seen on the preseason utilization, what we've heard from the coaching staff, I feel pretty confident Eckler is going to have the passing down role. I think Brian Robinson Jr., he'll get a little bit of work there because, on early downs, you still throw the ball too. You don't always have to run the ball on early downs. But I think obvious passing situations, we're going to see Eckler. But Robinson, when you look at him, Ian, like he's just been a pretty good running back. The guy comes out of Alabama. He was a later round pick because he was an older player. So he's almost more of a tweener between middleman and poor man where he goes in ADP because he goes ahead of Zeke. He goes ahead of Gus Edwards. He goes ahead of these other players that we're talking about. But if I had to pick someone on the Commanders, and I'm not saying it's a lock, to score 10 rushing touchdowns, I would say that it's Brian Robinson Jr. Like he just stylistically fits that sort of play. He's that no nonsense between the tackles runner. He's shown that he can do it. So yeah, I think Brian Robinson in an offense that we like more, that's also going to get the advantage that we talked about with Derrick Henry of teams having to decide. Do we want to invite them to hand the ball off to Brian Robinson Jr., or do we want to try to take away the big rushing play from Jaden Daniels? So I think we also get an efficiency boost. That probably means 1 or 2 long touchdowns that we get to add on top of whatever he's getting from inside the 5-yard line. So I think he does have a shot to get to 10 rushing touchdowns.
I know last night in our draft, we were debating a bit between taking one of the Bengals running backs and Brian Robinson. Look, feel free to have your preferred option and everything, but those are the exact sort of, RB3 guys with potentially higher ceilings than they're being given credit for, who you should be turning to when you are going one of these, zero hero RB builds that Dwain and I were end up, doing. So make sure you guys check out that stream again. We'll be up around 3 p.m. today. Dwain, let's round things out with a look at some tight ends. The archetype we're going with here is yak-minded tight ends, capable of making the most out of limited opportunities, because as great as it is, having the Sam Laportas and the Trey McBrides of the world, there are only so many tight ends that have a chance to legit rack up those triple-digit targets. So beyond them, maybe we start looking at guys who, again, might not be getting, more than 80, 90 targets on the season, but my goodness, can they make the most out of them? So Richman, 49ers tight end, George Kittle, tight end 5, pick 56 over at ESPN. Middle class man, I have Raiders tight end Brock Bowers as tight end 11, pick 114. Also, shout out Dave and the Joker. We'll talk about him in a minute. And then the poor man, really poor, but also, guys, would not be surprised if he emerges as the All caps, late round tight end of 2024. That's right, Jonnu Smith, tight end 25, basically free on ESPN. And Dwain also shouts out Noah Fant. So, Dwain, I mean, George Kittle, absolute dog. And if we do end up seeing Brandon Ayuk leaving San Fran, I think we can all agree that he is going to have an even higher ceiling. So, you love George Kittle. I love George Kittle. Everyone loves George Kittle. But talk a little bit about, Brock Bowers or David Njoku, two guys that drafters got to take a long look at. Otherwise, they risk being left behind at the position, given that, again, after the top 12, 13 tight ends are off the board, things get pretty rough in a hurry.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say real quick about Kittle is he can give you yak from anywhere. Most of the time when you look at yak players, and this is what's happening here with David Njoku, is when you get the ball underneath the coverage and the defense, well, then where do your yards come from? You're going to make them up running after the catch. The defenders are further away from you. They're all rallying to tackle you. The further that you get the ball down the field, regardless of what position it is, the more likely you're to have less yak. The beauty of Kittle is that he still gets yak even when he gets the ball down the field. But yeah, man, David Njoku over these last 3 seasons, man, 7.5, 5.9, and 7.0 yards after the catch on average. That is absolutely phenomenal. When you look at the guy, Ian, if we were in ancient Rome, this dude would be in the gladiator contest. David Njoku is built like a freaking tank, but he moves a little bit. I don't want to say he moves like a cheetah, but he looks a lot faster than a tank, right? I get blitzkrieg is what we would probably say about David Njoku. So Brock Bowers, very similar, man. And I just love what we're hearing. Playmaker. They move him all over the formation. They're giving him carries in the backfield. The coaching staff is basically saying what we saw at Georgia. Just find ways to get this guy the ball, and it's going to be good for you.
And then Jonnu Smith, you're talking about guys moving like cheetahs. Jonnu moves like a cheetah with thoughts of an assassin out here, Dwain. Shout out Nasty Nas. But responsible for the 2 fastest ball carrier speeds of last season per next-gen stats. That's right, the Miami Dolphins got even faster. So only Kittle and Isaiah likely had better ESPN YAC scores. Again, I get it. Jonnu pissed us off because he wanted those targets going to Kyle Pitts. But now in a new offense, Jonnu Smith, if you, again, really need a tight end late, I think he could be your guy. Also, maybe, Dwain, Noah Fant, who, if we forgot, went to Iowa.
Yeah, Fant is this is really his archetype, is get him the ball, let him do work after the catch. I know that it hasn't necessarily come to fruition yet, but we should get the most routes that we've ever seen in a career for Noah Fant. There's just not a lot of depth on the Seahawks right now. So I expect that he could be 75, 80% route participation. We've got questions at wide receiver. Tyler Lockett's getting older. Yeah. He's really, got some red flags. So, yeah, I think you can do worse than Fant if you really get, just kind of messed up in your draft and you're like, wow, I'm staring at some crazy options here at tight end. I think that Fant is a name that you can think about with your very last pick. Well, unless you're taking your kicker or your defense there, Ian.
Good job by you, Dwain. Good job by you with all your strategy pieces that everyone can find on FantasyLife.com for free. Dwain's gone through quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end at this point. Perfect strategy. And again, just shows you where, hey, guess what? You can't get the top player at every position throughout the draft. Some of the extra options you're going to have with value in the middle and then even later rounds. So check that out. And then check us out tomorrow. Dwain and I back in the saddle again, talking our perfect draft strategy, getting you ready for draft weekend. So appreciate you guys as always. For Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.